it's Lisa. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back to my channel. I am in the middle of doing an ornament designing series. So if you haven't checked out my design video where I did the first Christmas, go ahead and check that out. I will link it in the little card up here for you. In today's video, I'm going to be using a design from a design pack to create this cute little Mary X mask ornament because guys, 2020, who would have thought that this would just be an adjective to describe stuff? So I thought, hey, why don't we have a little bit of fun with this? Let's make this Mary X mask ornament to be put on our Christmas tree to remember this crazy year that we've had. So I am going to be taking a design that I got from a design bundle from designbundles.net, and I'm going to be repurposing this to use in the Glowforge. Now, one thing that I like about this is I am using varying power for this design. Both parts of these are engraved. One is engraved lighter, one is darker. So I'm going to show you how I did the light and dark engrave with the Glowforge. And speaking of Glowforge, I do have a link in the description how you can save up to $500 on a new machine. So go ahead and check that out. And if you're ready to get started, we're going to go ahead and start designing. Here we are. I have my initial design open. So what I like about using my Glowforge and just the different holiday seasons is that I love to take designs from like maybe a pack I bought or a bundle that I bought, and I modify it to fit what I need. So I'm not going to offer you this design file at the end of the video, but I am going to link the pack that this mask is from. I purchased this, but it does not allow for me to change it and resell it, and to be honest, it's not fair to the person who created it. So I'm going to show you how I modified it, but you do, if you want to make this, go grab it from the link in the description. And again, I know I've mentioned it before, but if you're watching and observing, this is a great time to get a Glowforge. So I do have a link in my description as well that shows you how you can save up to $500. You can use my link and get a great deal on your machine. So let's go ahead and get started. Now this is from the Mammoth SVG bundle, and this is a healthcare workers bundle within it that I got from Design Bundles. And they have a whole bunch of nurses. The whole closed eye thing is not necessarily my aesthetic, but the design they used for this mask is really nice, and it turns out it's good for ornaments. So we're gonna break apart this design. I right-clicked on it and I ungrouped. So we have all of our stuff ungrouped. Let's go ahead and grab this right here and delete it. And what's great is that the color on the inside was also taken out, so I can very quickly delete it. So I already have the base of my design all set up. Now we need to type out our design. Let's type Mary. So we have Mary. Now again, we have this green box around here. This is for text edit mode. I'm going to click off of it and click on it one time. This is how I can really quickly change the font in there. So this is going to be Barlow condensed, and my mistake, I forgot to do this in all caps, so I'm going to double click on it. In 1 second, my computer's taking a moment. I double clicked on it. This has our green box around it. This means we're in text edit mode. This allows me to retype anything, change the font, any of that sort of thing. So if you're used to a word processor, you do know how to use this. I'm going to click and drag to grab the end of this and just type ERRY for Mary. And we're going to do that, and let's see how it looks bold. Oh, it didn't go because I didn't have it selected. So go ahead, select everything in here. I'm going to do Control A. So let's see. I don't really like it bold, so I'm going to keep it like that. I'm going to change the color, any color, just to fit it in here. And now I'm going to use my text tool again, click in here. We're going to type our other message, X-mask, because, you know, Xmas. And I am using the font Gold Mind. I got this from a recent sale that Design Font Bundles did, and I'll link this in the description as well. I really love using the Barlow font because it's a nice, like, tall, thin font. It's got a little bit of a modern look, but it's not, you know, too much. So we're gonna set this up, kind of position this on our design, and I'm kind of using a guide of one that I made earlier, and I'm just gonna shrink this down because I want it to fit just like this. Alright, so we have this right here. Now we just need to do the year. So I'm going to click on my Mary because I want the year to be the same font. I'm going to hover over it until my mouse is that little hand. Click drag, and now I've made a copy of it. I'm going to double click to go into text edit mode, hit Control A or Command A if you're on Mac, and type 2020. Because man, 2020, who would have thought that like 2020 would turn out to be an adjective? Like seriously. So I'm going to position this down here. I'm not going to worry too much about sizing yet. Let's select our font. This has overlapping lines. You'll see it in a couple places between the letters. And then I have my script overlapping on top of my words. So let's select both of these and weld. We have weld in the top toolbar right here, or you can right click and do weld, or you can go to the modify panel. So let's just do it at the top here, weld. And now we have multiple boxes. This is because each object is its own separate thing. They're not touching. So right click and make compound path. This just combines it into one big object. Now, if you're still unsure about make compound path, you can also group, no big deal. All right, and I'm going to shrink this just a little bit more. And I want to make sure that this is centered under my design. So let's select both of these by clicking and dragging. And we have our quick access toolbar again. This right here is our align panel. I'm gonna jump over and do this to align it in the middle. All right, so we have this all set. I'm going to grab both of these. You can either group or make compound path. I'm just gonna go ahead and group it. And let's look at our mask. All right, so let's position this on here. I'm gonna make it larger. We want it to kind of take up a decent amount of space on here. And we're going to select both of these right here. Go to our modify panel and center that. Now we're going to do a couple adjustments. You can see that when I have my text right on top, it's kind of hard to read it in certain areas. So we're going to adjust it a little bit. And so let's go ahead and do that. Let's click on our design, and we need to make space between our design and our background. And the way that we do that is we create an offset and then we subtract it from our bottom object. We're going to do that by going over to the right panel, and we have the star right here, which is for our offset panel. Click on that and click on offset. You can see that there's a line that's showing up already, and the great thing about the offset panel is it does a live preview as you go. So you can make it larger or bigger. I like to type in a distance, so I'm going to type in 0.06 and hit enter. This gives me a preview of how far away it is. I'm pretty happy with that. I don't want it to be super large, so hit apply. Now, you can see we have our multiple boxes over here. Because the offset was the last thing we created, it's also what's selected in here. I'm going to hold down shift and grab my mask in the background. And before that, don't do what I just did. Hold down shift and click on the mask again so it's not selected. I want to go through and I'm going to change this offset color so we can see it a little bit better. It's definitely not a requirement, but it helps me visualize exactly what's happening. So we have, there's our purple, that's our offset. Hold down shift, click on the mask. And so now we have one object and we want to use this to cut out from another one, and that's using the modify panel. Go over to the modify panel on the right side and subtract. So check it out, we have all of that in there. We're all set to go. Now you'll see multiple boxes again. So we want to make sure these are all one big object. This happens when you subtract because you're breaking apart the bottom object. So I'm just gonna right click, make compound path. So now this is together, Control Z, and that's together. So now we're almost done. We're going to resize this, and then we're going to make the opening for our hook or our string. I'm going to grab this entire thing, and you can either drag it down like this, or you can type in your dimensions. I'm just going to drag it down like this to make this 4 inches wide. That's close enough. Now let me zoom in. So now we need to make the opening here. I like to make the opening to my ornaments 1/8 of an inch. So we're gonna go over to the shape panel. It's over on the left. Hover over until you see more in the circle. And now we're going to draw a circle. Now the way that we get a perfect circle or symmetrical shape in Silhouette Studio is that we hold down shift. And this applies to a lot of design software. So if you're going to move to another one, this is at least good to know now. Hold down shift, click and drag, and now we have our first circle set. Now I want this to be an exact dimension. I'm not going to guess on drawing it. I'm just going to make sure it's selected right here. Click this little lock aspect ratio, and I'm going to type in a width of 0.125, which is 1/8 of an inch. So this is the inside part. This is the opening to our ornament. And now we need to go through to our offset panel again, and let's make an offset from that. So here's the default distance on that. It's 0.125. It's pretty large, so let's do 0.08. I'm happy with that. And now let's apply. Now, there are two things that we need to do. So Glowforge will read both of those circles as separate objects, even if we did a make compound path. So we need to make sure that that circle is subtracted out from the top. So just like we did before, let's go ahead and change our colors so you can visualize what we're talking about. Let me get this inside one. All right, so we have our two colors right here. You want to make sure that top shape is, that smaller circle is on top. Select both of these, modify panel, and subtract. All right, so we have this all set. All right, so now what we're going to do is we need to set this up to cut and engrave. Now, I am going to have this ornament engrave this black part lighter than the text in here, so it's going to give it a little bit of dimension. Now what we're looking at is all of our engraving. We need to set up a border around our design to actually cut it out. So it's kind of like when you draw a picture on a piece of paper. Like if you draw a picture, it's still on the paper. You have to cut it out if you're going to, you know, make it a shape. So I'm going to select my mask in here. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. And again, offset panel. A lot of times with designing, especially if you're doing stuff with Glowforge, you're going to be using the offset panel and the modify panel all the time. All right, so let's go ahead, offset. You can see there's the default distance of 0.125. That's a little bit large. Let's do 0.08, enter, and you can see that's all in there. Now let's hit apply. So now that we have this applied, we're actually going to really put into practice what we talked about with make compound path. So you can see that this is one object. We saw it get made, but there are little lines on the inside here, right? I want to tell Silhouette Studio to say, hey, break this apart. I don't want this to be a whole bunch of lines together. I want them to be individual objects. So I'm going to do this by right-clicking and release compound path. Now remember, an indicator of separate objects in Silhouette Studio is that they have that box around it. So you can see all this stuff in here has a box around it. Now, a cool thing when you're selecting objects is if you want to select multiple objects in Silhouette Studio, you can hold Shift, click, click, click. Now the inverse also applies. If you have a bunch of objects selected and you want to deselect one of them, you can hold down Shift and click on it as well. So I'm holding down Shift, clicking on the outline that I want to keep, and look, everything inside is still selected, and I can just very quickly delete it. So now I have my offset and my, I have my offset already. So I'm going to bring it over to my mask, select both of these really quickly, hit this center tool right here. This just makes sure I have it set up, and it moved my mask a little bit, so I'm going to move my text a bit too. One more step. We want to take our little opening, bring this down. I have that selected. Let's hold down the Shift button to get this offset and weld. So you can see it's green. That just means it came to the top. Let me right click, send to back. Check it out. So now we have that whole thing there. It's the same color as our text. So let me go through and make this lighter. Okay. So when we send this over, we are going to have three functions that we need to do. We need to cut the whole design out. We need to do the lighter engrave for the mask and the dark engrave for the text. So we need to do three functions, meaning that we need to have three different line colors in our design. We have one on the outside for red. We have this one for the mask. We're going to change to black because that's the color of the mask. And then let's get our text on the inside. Let's change that to green because that's the color of our text anyway. I'm going to go right here, green. So now we have three different line colors. We are all set to go. Don't worry about the colors in there because Glowforge is not, you can't print colors. You don't have to worry about that. You're going to select this, grab it like this, select it, and go to File, Save Selection. So we'll save it selection, choose where you want it to be, and make sure in that little bar at the bottom, you change this to an SVG file. I'm going to go ahead and save this, upload this into my Glowforge software, and I'll see you in just a minute. Here we are. I've uploaded this into Glowforge, and you'll see on the left side I have 3 different settings in here. Now we're gonna go through and choose them. So here's our mask. This is the basic engraving. We're gonna go over to engrave, and I tested, so I programmed my own. So I am cutting on birch plywood. I have the plywood that I use from Woodpeckers in the description below. Birch light, and let me show you. I'm doing my speed at 1,000, my precision power at 45, and I'm just doing 270 lines per inch. Because I want this to be pretty light, I don't need that. Now, lines per inch helps increase the detail in your design. So if you're doing something with a lighter engrave, but it is detailed, you may want to increase your lines per inch. And now we have our engrave. This is birch, just normal birch. Oh, this is cut. Sorry, this is undercut. Let's go to engrave. So we have birch darker, which is a darker one. And I did my speed at 500, so I'm slowing it down, and I'm increasing the power by 85. So that means more power and more time in the pass, which means we're gonna get a darker engrave. So let's go back, and then we have our cut settings. So we're gonna cut, and we're gonna do birch. Now you'll notice in my workspace here that I have it looks blue. I covered the entire piece of wood with a form of masking tape. This is the kind that's used for 3D printing. I'll link it in the description below. I like doing that because I sanded this piece of wood first, and I'm masking it so that I have a nice smooth piece of wood and I won't have the charring around it. Now before I really set this up, I'm going to click in these dots and set the focus on my board. This will make sure I have the right distance. You can manually program it. You can do it at, this is 1/8 of an inch, so 0.125. But I always like setting my focus manually just to be safe. So we're going to let this focus, and once we have that done, I'll position it and get it ready to do my job. All right, so we have this set up in here. I'm going to grab my design. Let's position this. I'm going to do it as far down as I can. I'm going to do it on this side. And Glowforge has a safe cutting engraving area. You'll see it's this light gray line that's showing up. If I bring my design past it, it will turn the coloring off, which means the job won't go. So I'm going to bring it down here, and we're going to hit print. Now this is going to send the information to my machine. Don't forget Glowforge runs through Wi-Fi. So it's going to prepare, let me know how long it's going to take, all that fun stuff. And after it's done preparing, it gives me the time. We're going to jump over to the machine, turn it on, and watch it go. All right, everyone, here is my ornament with the masking removed. You can see we have this nice lighter color and the dark engrave, and the opening for our hook or string. Now I'm hanging this on my tree using like a colored baker's twine. You can get hooks, you can do jute, you can do a nice little red ribbon. I think that would look really nice, but super easy. I really like doing this project so I can get the different look with the engrave, that lighter color and darker color. And it was a great use of one of my old design bundles that I repurposed for Christmas time. So if you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed to me on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It would mean a lot to me. And if you're scoping around and still thinking about a Glowforge, I do have a link in the description. You can save up to $500 on a new Glowforge machine.